The main focus of this podcast is high intensity interval training, or HIIT. HIIT is highlighted by very intense intervals coupled with a resting interval. We are using a protocol very similar to one used in studies done by Martin Gabala and Kirsten Burgermaster at McMaster University. We used a 30-second Wingate protocol with a 4-minute rest period in between workloads. And Wingate is an all-out 30-second cycling test using 7.5% of the person's body weight as the resistance. This test is usually used to measure anaerobic power, but in this protocol it is used as the workload for the interval training program. We did 7 interval training sessions, doing 4 on Monday and Wednesday, 5 on Friday and Monday, 6 on Wednesday and Friday, and to get a tapering effect in our program, we did 4 sessions on our last Monday. These interval training sessions are extremely difficult and very demanding on a person's body. In our podcast, we did many fitness tests pre and post the HIIT protocol: body composition, vertical jump, VO2 max, a Wingate test, blood pressure, 40-meter sprint, and an agility test.
The BOD-POD test uses air displacement to determine fat mass from fat-free mass. The BOD-POD's measurement uses a very precise scale that calculates an individual's body density through mass and volume. During a measurement, the BOD-POD produces very small volume changes inside the chamber and measures the pressure response to these small volume changes. Before the subject gets started with the BOD-POD, the tester must go through various steps for calibrating the equipment. During this time, the subject will dress down to minimal clothing. Once the subject is ready, their weight is taken on the scale. Afterwards, the tester gives instructions to the subject about the test. For reliable data, the BOD-POD runs at least 2 tests, 45 seconds of length each. During this time, the subject must stay seated still. Once the initial testing is complete, the subject will be given instructions on using the filter to get a measure of their lung capacity. The subject is signaled with one finger up to start the normal breathing in the filter. After about 15 seconds, the subject is signaled a second finger for the subject to take 3 light exhales in the tube. The subject's vertical jump was recorded using the Vertec, which measures maximum muscular power or anaerobic capacity. This is the ability of muscle tissues to exert high force while contracting at a high speed. Power output reflects both force and velocity, and the height of the jump is a function of the velocity. We first measured the standing reach, where the jumper stood with feet together as he raises his dominant arm, and the highest point, which is tips of the fingertips, is measured on the Vertec. The Vertec is then raised, and the subject moves to a jumping position. No step is allowed as he jumps as high as he can, and the highest jump is measured. We then use the Harmon formula to determine peak power from the subject's jump height. VO2 max is a test that is commonly used for athletes, general fitness, and clinical subjects. A VO2 max test measures the maximal amount of oxygen a person can utilize during intense or maximal exercise. This is measured in either an absolute measure, liters per minute, or a relative measure using the participant's body weight, milliliters per kilogram per minute. This test is often used as the best indicator of a person's cardiovascular fitness and endurance. We used an Astron cycling protocol to measure the subject's VO2 max. He was strapped with a mask that was connected to the metabolic cart to analyze his oxygen and carbon dioxide use. This test included a 5-minute warm-up at 75 watts, then increased to 100 watts once the test had started. From there, the intensity went up 25 watts every 2 minutes until the participant had to stop. The subject was told to stay close to 50 revolutions per minute throughout the duration of the test, and our testers recorded his heart rate every minute the test was being performed. Prior to the Wingate testing, the subject's weight in kilograms must be measured to retrieve 75 grams per kilogram of their body weight. The 75 grams per kilogram of the subject's body weight will be used as their resistance on the bike during testing. After the subject performs a warm-up that consists of 2-minute cycling at low intensity, 5 seconds is allowed to increase speed to maximum to start the test. At the end of 5 seconds, the resistance is set on the bike and the subject cycles at max speed for 30 seconds. Once 30 seconds is over, the subjects will perform a 2-minute cool down. The Wingate test measures peak power, measured in the first 5 seconds of testing, expressed in watts. Relative peak power, measured by dividing peak power by body mass and expressed as watts per kilogram. Mean peak power, sum of power output throughout the testing. Minimum power output, lowest power produced in watts. And fatigue index, which is a percentage of the difference between peak power and minimum power output. The 40-yard sprint is an assessment that tests how long it takes to sprint 40 yards. It's an important test to all athletes that not only shows how fast they are, but it also shows their explosiveness and acceleration. Many people use this test to see how fast someone is, as well as how fast they can get up to speed. The equipment needed for a 40-yard sprint test is cones or marking tape to indicate where the start and stop is, a timing gate or stopwatch to record the time, and a flat surface. Before the individual begins the 40-yard sprint, they must warm up and stretch for several minutes before the test begins. After they have gone through a thorough warm-up, allow the individual to go through 2 practice runs at submaximal speed, which will allow their body to become further prepared for the test. Once the individual is prepared, they will assume a starting position that is most comfortable to them behind the starting line, which is to be held for 3 seconds. An auditory cue signals the start, which they will then sprint 40 yards at maximal speed. The average of 3 trials is recorded to the nearest tenth of a second. The purpose of the Pro Agility or 20-yard shuttle is to test speed, explosion, body control, and the ability to change direction. The test shows the body's neuromuscular control and motor skill function and how well an individual is able to change direction in a limited space. The equipment needed for the test is a stopwatch or timing gate, measuring tape to indicate the length of the test, 3 cones, and a flat surface. 3 marker cones are placed along a line 5 yards apart. Before the subject begins the agility test, they must go through a thorough warm-up to better prepare their body for the test. The individual starts on the middle cone facing forward and is given the choice of going left or right to start. Once the individual is given an auditory cue, they turn and sprint 5 yards to the side they choose, touch the cone with their outside hand, turn and sprint 10 yards to the opposite cone, again touching the cone with their outside hand, and sprint 5 yards to the center cone. The test starts on the middle cone and ends on the middle cone. The best of the 3 trials is recorded to the nearest 100th of a second.
As you saw earlier, we measured body composition, vertical jump, VO2 max, Wingate, blood pressure, 40-yard sprint, and an agility test. Not every test we measured saw improvements after going through the high-intensity interval training protocol. The primary improvements were in body composition, max power, and mean power. Pre the HIT protocol, Austin was 20.5% body fat, and post the HIT program, he was 15.5% body fat. His pre-max power was measured at 646.78 watts, and his post was measured at 903.95 watts. Austin went from 494.34 watts for his mean power all the way up to 721.95 watts. Austin had a smaller increase in VO2 max. Initially, he was at 42.5 milliliters per kilogram per minute, and increased to 43.9 milliliters per kilogram per minute. And that is our podcast. Thank you.